Hello, this is Sarah of Sarastrology, and this is the last video on chart rectification, hopefully. And in this one I'm going to share more of a way to check that a rectification is correct, or check on rectification how it works out and if it's accurate, then a way to actually rectify. And this is very good information to have because you need to be able to check whether your rectification is correct and whether you did it correctly. But a little bit on this concept, when I first started getting into astrology and learning about the houses and signs, somewhere I read about how the signs and houses are really just telling the human story. They're telling how things progress, the processes that we must go through to get to the end of our life and the end of anything, and just the process in which to get the steps to go through in life. So if we were to look at all the domains and concepts that each sign and house represents, we can see how they're just natural progressions through life. And this idea has always intrigued me, and I've always wanted to pinpoint what it meant and what each degree in a sign could translate as for the age of the person, if in fact the signs do illustrate how we progress through life. So I came up with the idea that each sign basically represents about 5 years of a person's life. For example, the whole sign of Aries equals the age of 0, or birth, to about the age of 5. Taurus, 5 to 10, Gemini, 10 to 15, Cancer, 15 to 20, and so on. And this works out throughout the whole wheel. Every sign and house, this age progression, which is 5 years per sign, it seems to make sense. And so, from when we are first born to about 5, we're all about ourselves. We're all just starting out in life. We're learning to survive in the world and our environment and around us and everything that's there. And it reflects our ascendant. And Aries, it's the primal, what we need to survive, our basic needs. And that's the first house, and that's Aries. And our first, few years of life, that's what everyone is up against. And then from 5 to 10, we become somewhat materialistic. We're interested in our possessions. We're still learning. We learn about property, and we learn about sharing and what that means, and we're growing. 10 to 15, we then go through. Usually most of us go through puberty, and we can become fickle, and communicating and socializing, sharing with others becomes a very big issue, and it's something that we must go through. And this progression works throughout all the signs, and it works with every age. And then when we hit 60, at 30 degrees Pisces or 0 degrees Aries, it just keeps going. It's a continuous circle. It's a cycle. It's the circle of life. So with this idea, I narrowed it down further and figured that if each sign represented 5 years, and there are 30 degrees per sign, that would mean that each year would equal 6 degrees, which can be reduced again to each degree equaling about 2 months of a person's life. So this really is just a fun way for me to ponder the meaning of the signs and degrees, and a good way for me to think about it as well, and how we progress and changes that we go through. The way in which this can apply to chart rectification is interesting. So in the first video on chart rectification, I explained how we can use the very first life event that comes to mind with house and the ruler of that house as a significator, as a way to find the birth time. But many times, if we use the model of the 1 degree equaling 2 months of someone's life, the age of the person at the time of their life the time of their life event ends up actually equaling exactly their ascendant degree. And this concept I only stumbled upon after rectifying charts for a while, rectifying many charts, and then kind of thinking about this again at a later time, and it just ended up working out that way, basically. Now, it's not the best method because, say someone cannot think of a life event immediately, and then they probably have not lived it, and their ascendant could be older than they are at the time they have rectification done. If you're rectifying a chart for a person in their 30s, and their ascendant is in Pisces, then of course this method would not and could not work. But for individuals that have their first house cusp or ascendant in the beginning of the zodiac, in the first 3, first 4, this could be a very beneficial way of looking at rectifying their chart, or at least figuring out around when it could be. So it's a good approximator. It's a good way to estimate. So, for example, the very first time I rectified my own chart, using the method from the first video on chart rectification, my life event happened at the age of 14 and about 3 months, which would equal a little more than 25 degrees Gemini. Now, according to rectifications on my own chart and my birth record, this is 25 degrees Gemini using the 2 months, 1 degree for 2 months of a person's life. And according to my rectifications on my own chart and my birth record, my time of birth makes my ascendant at 25 degrees Gemini most every time. And this seems to be very accurate. But that's just one example. But all rectifications I've done so far that meet the criteria that I mentioned before have all worked out perfectly to this model in some way or another. So I just find this an interesting concept. I have not really experimented with it completely. It's not anything I really have read, but it's kind of a conglomeration of many different ideas, and it's a different way to think about things. And it also is interesting to look at compatibility charts or bi-wheels using this method, because then we can see if we put each person's ascendant at the age they were when they met the person the first time, using the 1 degree for every 2 months of their lives, you get very interesting symmetry results as far as where planets are placed in each other's houses. So, with that idea in mind, this is the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe to this channel.